All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Before we start today's podcast, I would like to let you know that my recording is not the best. The reason being is I went crabbing along the Oregon coast and dropped my phone on a wet dock because it was raining, and my microphone got wet, or at least that's what I think happened. So I went ahead and recorded a couple of podcasts, one right after another, one at the Cranberry Farm and the other at the Cranberry Museum, and my microphone was making a scratchy noise, an extremely bad one at that. I have a backup recorder that I use, and it worked on the first part at the Cranberry Farm, but for some reason it did not record at the Cranberry Museum. I gave my recording to Steve, my editor, and he worked extremely hard to take a lot of the fuzziness out of the recording. There is still some there, and I really appreciate Steve's efforts in trying to make it sound good. Hopefully it is not too disturbing, and you guys can get the full impact of what I learned at the Cranberry Museum. Enjoy the podcast. And I'm here with Ardell McPhail. And we are going to talk to her about cranberries, and we are at the farm. After we are done at the farm, we are going to head to the museum, and we'll be talking to
Paula.
We'll be talking to Paula. We'll be talking to Paula about what's there at the Cranberry Museum. This is something that I saw years ago when I was in Long Beach, and I was always intrigued, have not made it back to actually do the tour, to talk to anybody about this. And I guess we're going to find out about those little red things that we have at Thanksgiving. And it's in the middle of almost every juice you buy. So, Ardell, start telling us a little bit about cranberries, their benefits, their...
Oh, cranberries are great for your health. They've got vitamin C, and they have antioxidants, and they're a little sour, but they're really good.
They're really good. How is it that they managed to get in the middle of everything?
Well, I don't know. I guess it mixes with a lot of stuff, but it's a very tart flavor if you haven't got any sugar added, and I think that's why they need to add sugar if anybody can stand the juice.
Okay.
But the cranberries, when we're harvesting right now.
And it's October.
It's October.
And you're in the middle of harvest.
Right. And so what we do is the cranberries grow on vines in a bog, but they aren't in water all the time, except at harvest.
They're only in water at harvest.
Right. We flood each bog separately, and then we use a beater. We call a beater it's a reel that a machine that goes through and knocks the berries off.
Okay.
And then they float. And the reason they float is because the berry has little cells inside that are like air pockets.
Okay.
And so that's why they can float on the water, which makes our harvest easy because then they float on the water. We surround them with booms and then guide them to one side and elevate them onto a truck.
Okay, so when you say they grow on vines, are you talking about like grapevines?
No, it looks like heather in a way.
Okay, I don't know what heather is.
Heather is like that plant over there. But
Okay, describe it. It's kind of a ground cover.
Ground cover. Yeah, it comes up about a foot.
That's all the higher they come up?
That's all the further the vines will be, and they're perennial, so they're every year.
Okay.
And so one crop a year, and and so you can when we're walking in the water, we're probably up to our knees.
So the water's not even very deep in your bog.
No, it's not and that's only at harvest again.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a vine, and we train it with the beater and a pruner. We train the vines to go a certain direction so that every year we go that way when we harvest.
Okay, so
it's like the
go
nap
around.
Yeah, like nap on fabric. You know, you push it one way. If we go the wrong way, it lifts up all the vines and tears them up. So You have to go the same direction.
Now, do you train them when they're on the ground before you put the bog in?
No, the bog is in, and it's got a layer of sand, and then we plant the vines straight into the sand. They only have about a 4-inch root.
Okay.
And so once it gets thick enough, then we can start training and pruning. And that so early on, it takes about 2 years to be able to start really training it right, and then 3 years for a crop.
Okay, so you don't get any crop for your first 2 years.
No, and it's about 25,000 an acre to plant.
Really?
Yeah. So you have that. It's a big upfront thing for investment to make sure that you get it, but then it pays back pretty fast.
Now you're with Ocean Spray, I'm
Right.
assuming, because you've got an Ocean Spray hat on, you've got an Ocean Spray shirt on.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that you're part of the Ocean Spray farmer group.
Yeah, and Ocean Spray is a growers cooperative.
Okay.
Since 1930.
Okay.
And so each farmer owns what they do on the farm.
Okay.
How many acres they have and how much they produce. Boy, your dog is loving this.
Yeah, the dog loves this bog. She's having a blast. My dog's. She said that it was okay for the dog to come out. I don't think she had any idea how much fun the dog was going to have in her front yard. Now, we were talking about your front yard real quick.
Yeah.
This bog that you've got comes right up to your door.
Right.
Looks like you've got it cased in somewhat.
Yeah, the dog is running through the water in the bog and just having a blast. But no, if we were to build this bog, today, they wouldn't let us build that close. This bog started in 1910.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's been that long.
It's been that long, and
you look really young for your age.
Well, we didn't do it. We're the fourth owner. So, but no, they plant them. They started planting. They just as they cleared land, then they would plant the bog and then clear some more and plant the bog back in 1910, all by hand.
Wow.
Yeah, there were trees and everything.
And how many acres of cranberries do you have here?
We have 105 acres.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of...
Well, for this area, we're the biggest, but in Wisconsin, they might have 2,000 acres.
Really?
Yeah. So we aren't that. We're big fish in a little pond, I guess.
Okay. So this isn't like the premier place to grow cranberries.
No,
they grow them all over the.
They grow them in 5 states.
Okay.
And there'll be a test after this.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah. So they grow them in Wisconsin, and New Jersey, Massachusetts, Oregon, and Washington.
Okay.
And British Columbia.
I haven't seen any other cranberry bogs or signs or anything else all the way up the Oregon coast.
There are some in Bandon, Oregon. It's down south of Coos Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, they're bigger than us. We're the smallest place in the U.S. for growing cranberries, smallest area.
Oh, really?
And Oregon, Washington has 2 different kinds of areas. The Long Beach Peninsula, mostly we're harvesting wet harvest.
Okay.
And up in Grayland, which is about an hour and a half north, and out to the coast, on the other side of Willapa Bay, they do dry pick, which is for fresh fruit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when you go to the museum, you'll see what they use for a picker. They don't have water. There's no flooding.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do that. They run this. It's like a beater and a pruner and everything all together, and a lawnmower sort of thing.
Okay.
But it's kind of an interesting piece of equipment that you'll see.
Okay, so I'm going to make some assumptions, and you're going to correct me with every one that I assumed wrong. Okay, so I assume that in the spring, you end up with your cranberries coming up on dry ground, and...
No, the berries don't form until just about in June. They start forming.
Oh, the berries start forming. Then.
Well, actually, there's bloom in the spring, which we need to frost protect.
Okay. Because they're
buds,
real susceptible to frost.
They're very susceptible at that time. Then in May we bring. Then they start blooming in May, late May, and the bees come.
You hire bees.
We hire bees, and they come and pollinate, and then the berries start forming in June.
Okay.
July they start coloring up. August more color, and then we harvest.
Okay. And so when I drive by this, let's say in August, I'm going to see just basically a field just like any other
like
farmer's
a plant,
field.
like
And-
plants.
Right.
Yep.
And there'll be a lot of little red berries on it.
Yeah, but they'll be getting darker and darker, and you can't really see the berries unless you're right on top of them.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Oh,
wouldn't
'cause
see them. You wouldn't see them from the road.
Okay.
Because they're down in the vines, kind of.
And how do you water them? Do you water them?
Sprinklers. We have
with
solid
center pivots?
solid set sprinklers. You can see
Okay.
the sprinklers out here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see
Yeah,
them sticking
they're
up above the
sticking up.
water.
Right.
Okay.
And we have a pump. We pump from the lake over here.
Okay.
And turn on the sprinklers. We have to irrigate. We try to get at least a half inch a week
Okay.
of irrigation. They don't want to be sitting in water. We sometimes can overwater, but we get
really?
plenty of rain, so
Right.
that's always nice. Although this year was a little drier, so we did have to irrigate.
Okay. And then you flood about 2 weeks before you're going to harvest.
Just like the day before.
The day before.
Well, we started flooding since this is a big 4-acre place.
Okay.
We started flooding it. I think. Let's see. This is Friday. We started flooding on Wednesday.
Okay.
So because it's so big, but most of them we would flood the day before and then beat.
Okay.
Run our machine through, and they float. The next day, the crew comes in and picks them up.
And do you have to be careful when you're beating them because the ground? I guess the water would be really, or the soil would be really wet and easy to pull them out. And
yeah, but they're pretty hardy because that reel is really spinning. But it kind of goes with the vines, so it just kind of brushes them.
Okay.
And runs over them, but it does run over them. But they have great big slicks tires on the beater.
Okay.
I think that's my husband.
And then all the berries float to the top.
Right.
And then you've got a net or a screen.
No, we have booms like you'd see on an oil slick thing where they surround it. They're made of wood and they float and they connect together. And we just kind of gather it in towards one area on the dike.
Okay.
And then there's the elevator, we call it, or a conveyor.
Okay.
And that they push that up and it puts it into the trucks. And the trucks hold about 3 tons of cranberries each. It's a little 1-ton truck with 6 totes, 1,000 pounds each.
Okay. And then how far do you have to haul them?
We go up to the ocean spray plant from here. We're the farthest on the peninsula. So it's about 2.5 miles.
Oh, that's not far.
Not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how many growers are there in this area?
I think 28.
Okay.
And we're kind of in the woods. You don't see a lot of, our farm's probably the most visible from the roads. A lot of them go back in the trees.
Okay. Well, this is cool. Yeah, I can see all the berries inside of your little float there that you're bringing over to the conveyor belt.
But this morning it was just covered, the whole
thing,
and there hadn't been any wind. We love it when there's wind.
Oh,
because it would blow them all over. But there wasn't any wind, so they did a lot of walking.
Okay.
To go in again.
Okay. Yeah, this is really interesting because I didn't ever know the life of a cranberry.
It's interesting. See, now we have a crew. We have 4 people full time that work for us.
That's all year round.
Yeah, and then at harvest we hire 3 more.
Okay, and what do you do in the winter?
In the winter, well, first of all we prune at the end.
Okay.
Or after harvest we start pruning.
Now is that done by hand?
No, it's a machine again with a reel, and so it depends on nice weather. You kind of wait for good weather to try to prune.
Okay.
But and you've got time. You've got till through. Let your dog again into the box. She can't hurt you.
She's a water dog.
She's harvesting.
She's harvesting. She's helping.
Anyway, so in the winter, and then we would be planting new bogs. We try to have something almost ready to plant in the summer when it's dry, and then we would plant in the winter.
Okay, and what's the life of a cranberry plant? You said it takes 3 years to your first harvest.
Right, but if you don't mess it up, it could be forever.
Really?
We had the ones that were planted in this bog here originally in 1910. We took it out in like 1980.
Really?
Because the variety was not very good. It was old, and So we took it out and replanted. But they would last.
That's 70 years.
Yeah, they could last a long time. Yeah.
Well, that's way
So the only time we really want, since it is expensive to renovate the bogs, the main thing is you want to change if it's a variety that's not doing well. You want something that's better yield and more, frost resistant and disease resistant. So.
Okay. That's really interesting. And you said that most of the soil around here is pretty heavy in peat.
Yeah, it's actually it's not the nice kind of peat from Scotland that you would that they used to burn. They tried here, I guess, in 1910 to do that, but it was too mucky. It's gooey. It's called C-strand variant muck. That's the
C-strand variant muck. Okay. I think peat's a much nicer word.
Yeah, peat's nicer. So, and then,
it gives you the vision of something fluffier than muck.
That's right. But since we are so wet, we get 10 inches a year sometimes. Right. Mostly average around 80 inches.
Okay. So. Yeah, that's a lot of rain.
Yeah.
And then we were talking, and your house sits right, like I said.
It's like
20 feet.
Yeah, 20 feet
from the bog that's right now, and you said your yard's all flooded, which is obvious. That's what my dog's running through and having a blast.
We have to wear our boots to get out of the house at this time when we've got this one flooded. But actually, the house being on piling, if a big heavy truck goes by, we can feel that.
Really?
The peat just gives that. It's just like Jell-O.
And that's when it's dry or when it's wet, like now?
Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah.
And then she was saying that they have to make all kinds of adjustments to their house once the bog leaves and they get back to normal. She said her doors don't fit right and the windows don't fit right.
Yeah,
sounds like a lot of extra work every year.
Yeah, well, not too bad. But yeah, the doors stick somehow when it gets too dry because they're used to being moist, and then we get extra wet, but then that doesn't last very long. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is way cool.
Yeah. But the stuff in the museum, now the museum, I could tell you a little bit about how that got started.
Let's hear it. We're here.
Because I don't know that our manager knows all the detail, but basically it's a research station for Washington State University.
Okay. For cranberries?
For cranberry research.
Okay.
And they were WSU was going to send our researcher away and close the station. Well, the growers got together and said, "No, you're not. We're going to keep it going, and you need to just supply us the researcher. We'll take care of the whole facility," and which we did, and we built all kinds of buildings up there, and we started a museum. We did a 501c3.
Okay, right.
And so that we could make the museum and got our it's an educational farm then for the tourists to come visit, and it's really kind of neat because we have a walking tour during the winter when the museum we didn't used to be open in the winter. Now we're open all year. Okay. So, but when we started we weren't, and so they have a little brochure they can walk through the farm and answer all their questions about cranberries.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but anyway, we formed that. Ocean Spray helped with some grants to help us buy the buildings. And so right now we're waiting for a new researcher because the one we had retired. So we're hoping that WSU hurries up and hires somebody new. But
cool.
Yeah.
So is there other companies besides Ocean Spray that work with the cranberries? Ocean Spray, when you walk through the grocery store aisle, you've got your off-brand names, like the store name or whatever, but Ocean Spray seems to be the big one. It's
a big one, and we think it is. We think it's the best.
I think it's the best.
No, there are several other companies that they call them. It's called Ocean Spray, which is the cooperative or independent fruit.
Okay.
And the other farmers that sell independent would sell to certain, like Smuckers or Cliff Star or Pappas. Those are different cranberry companies that mostly do juice.
Okay.
Langers, you've probably heard of them.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Or they just buy the product. They don't even, and it's not their main thing. They just might buy cranberries for their juices. So basically, Ocean Spray is the one that's done the innovating, the advertising, all that, pretty much. Okay. The others don't advertise.
Now, do you guys use a lot of chemicals on your
We have to use, cranberries are grown in this wet environment, so they get fungus. We have to use a fungicide.
Okay.
And we have 2 bugs that we have to watch out for. There's a black-headed fireworm.
Okay.
And you'll get to see pictures at the museum of those. And there's a black veined weevil that gets in the dry picking place.
Okay.
We've pretty much flood them out with our flooding system here. But when they can wipe out a bog just the next year, there's nothing there.
Really?
Dead.
Wow.
And the fireworm, it attacks the buds, and it's like somebody took a match and torched the top of your plants.
Okay.
And it looks like a fire went through. That's
Really?
where it got its name,
Right.
I guess. But that bug has been around forever, so we basically just control it a little with an insecticide. So, but yeah, if you're trying to do organic cranberries, it's really hard because they don't have the products or whatever to take care of the fungus and the bugs.
Okay. So you just about have to use
Pretty
chemicals.
much, yeah.
Okay. But it doesn't sound like you've got a lot of them.
No.
And what about fertilizer
and
stuff?
fertilizer, we do use fertilizer. We don't have to add much nitrogen because the soil is already, but we do add other elements and potassium and nitrogen, potassium. Anyway, it's a mixture.
Yeah,
24, 24. Or 14, 14, 14. Those are the ones.
Well, cool. Okay. Well, is there anything else you need to tell us?
I don't think so. I think when you go to the museum, you'll see how they scalp the bog and how they, you can see all that kind of stuff through there. And there's an excellent gift shop that you can always purchase a bunch of stuff. You can go.
Does it all say Ocean Spray on it?
No, there's hardly anything says Ocean Spray.
Really?
We're trying to be generic.
Generic, okay.
But there are, and there's a wonderful ice cream you can get.
Cranberry flavored.
Cranberry flavored.
Cranberry flavored ice cream. I'm an ice cream person.
You need to try that.
Cranberry ice cream.
Yes, you need to try it. It's
okay.
Good. Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, we're gonna head to part 2 of this and go talk to the museum.
Great.
I really appreciate your time,
you bet.
Adele, and explaining some of this to us. And I'm going to watch these guys work a little bit now that I can see it happening, and take a couple pictures here of your bog and your house and your.
You can walk around on the road there and just come in and see like that other lady.
Actually, that's Linda.
That's her doing it.
That's my Linda.
Okay.
She's over there taking pictures, so I don't have to. She takes most of my photographs.
Good.
So.
You don't have to get your feet wet either.
Well, like I said, they're already wet from yesterday. So, okay. Well, I really appreciate your time.
Nice.
And we will talk to you later.
Okay.
Okay, we are back with part 2 of the Cranberry Museum farm tour. And now I am with Paula, and we are at the museum, which is about 4 miles from the farm that we were at. And Paula is going to take us through the museum and probably give us a little bit more insight into cranberries, since we've got the farm tour. Now we're going to get the production and sorting and all of that kind of tour. So thank you, Paula, for taking time with us and doing the podcast here.
You're welcome, Loren. It's nice for you to come and visit us here today. We get visitors from all over the world here at the Cranberry Museum. So it's very exciting when people come to learn about the cranberry. There are lots of misconceptions out there about how the cranberries grow. And one of the things most people think is that they grow in water.
And that's what Ardell was saying, and I'm standing there looking at a whole bunch of water, and she said that only happens for about 4 days.
Right, once a year at harvest. People are surprised by that, because of the Ocean Spray commercials, there's 2 guys standing in the water, and so they assume that that's how they grow. Really, they grow in sandy soil, well-drained soil, and if they get too hot or too cold, they turn on the sprinklers to protect them.
So they're really temperature sensitive.
That's right. That's why the mild climate of the Northwest is perfect for growing cranberries.
Well, and then you're on the coast, too. So.
Right. The ocean air gives it this bright, rich color, and they cannot make Ocean Spray cranberry juice without West Coast berries.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and your average temperature here on the coast is pretty cool. I mean, you get, what, some days in the 80s?
Oh, not very many.
Yeah.
60s are warm when the sun's out. It seems nice and warm. In the winter, we don't get snow, but once in a while. So yeah, it's very mild climate here.
And she said that you had to protect against frost, and I was kind of surprised by that because you don't have much frost here either, do you?
Well, you know, the springs, we have killing frost in the spring, and that's how we got the researcher from WSU to come in 1922, because the cranberry farmers were losing a lot of their crops to the spring frost. It was too cold, freezing the berries, and they would die. So he remembered his physics lessons in WSU, Washington State University.
Okay.
And he remembered that as water cools, it gives off latent heat, and the heat protects the berries from freezing. And this is not only with cranberries, but many other crops.
Okay, my eyes just went up in the top of my head as I'm going, the water creates heat. I always thought water created cooling.
It does.
So this is a totally new concept to me.
Yes, and believe me, the cranberry farmers were very skeptical about this whole idea, and it took many years for them to adopt the practice. But when you try it and it works, you're going to do it.
Yeah, well, I knew that that like in Florida when they have the frosts, they always spray their crops, but I thought that was just because the water coming out of the ground at 50 degrees kept it from freezing. I didn't realize that water created a heat.
As it cools.
Okay. That's gonna take me a while to wrap my head around this one.
I understand.
Cool. Well, when we first came into the museum here, you guys have a very nice gift shop with all kinds of things. It just cranberries are in everything. It's amazing. You go to the store and you can't buy mango juice without having a cranberry jump in there someplace, or apple juice without a cranberry jumping in. So cranberries seem to have really worked their way into mainstream, I guess.
Yes.
Even though I know at the Thanksgiving table, the thing that nobody wants is the cranberries that are put out on the table.
Well, you shouldn't say nobody.
Well, I always eat them myself. I love the cranberry, but it seems like that's the one thing that a lot of people just try to avoid, and yet it's everywhere else.
Well, I tell you what, I search out cranberry products high and low, and we have all things cranberry in this gift shop. We have cranberry wines, we have preserves, of course, relishes, sauces, but scone mixes. We have cranberry lotion, where they cold press the tiny seeds out of the cranberry and put them in a lotion.
Oh, really?
The seeds oil is a very rare vitamin E, and it's very healing, so it's perfect for lotions. We have a foaming soap, and we have a lip balm.
Okay, and it's super high in vitamin E.
Yes, and that's just one of the many benefits of the cranberry. They are rich in vitamin C, they have fiber, they have antioxidants, polyphenols. The red fruits are very good for your health.
Are they really good for like kidney stones and that stuff too, aren't
Yes,
they?
kidney health, urinary tract infections, of course people know about that. We do sell a pure juice with no sugar added, so that's perfect for your UTIs. Also, it has been proven to prevent the ulcers. There's a bacteria called H. pylori that you get when you have ulcers, and the cranberry is effective in treating that as well.
Really?
And we have cranberry dental floss.
Cranberry dental floss.
Yes.
Okay.
Antibacterial. It's antibacterial properties in the floss.
Oh, really?
Perfect for oral health. So there's many benefits. So when people come in and say, "I love cranberries," I say, "They love you back."
Yes, they do. That's amazing. All the health benefits. So you brought a bowl of cranberries out so that we can try them in their raw form. Now you said that you had raw cranberry juice without any sugar added. I'm sure it's pretty tart.
Very.
Now, do they sell that in the stores also, or do you just sell it here?
They do have it in stores, however, it can be hard to come by. So I have an organic and a regular liter bottle in the cooler all the time. So.
Okay, and Ardell was saying that organic cranberries were really hard to do because of the pests and some of that kind of stuff that they're prone to. So where do you get those? Is there a specific organic farmer, or?
It is Ocean Spray.
It's Ocean Spray?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yes, so are you ready to try some
Let's try a cranberry and see if I can continue on with the podcast after I eat.
So, they say to try 3 of them, because the first one's tart, but the second one is so-so, and then by the third one you're thinking, yeah, these are pretty good.
Okay,
So
you just eat seeds and all.
seeds and all, and
they make a crunch.
they are crunch pop.
Actually, even the first one's not too
It's
bad.
not bad.
It's not nearly as sour as I thought it was going to be.
No, it can be a bit bitter, but it's not bad at all. And the health benefits are really good in the raw fresh ones.
Really? Can you buy the
No
raw fresh
sugar.
ones in the store too? Well, I guess you can.
We sell them right now. We have berries that were harvested about 3 days ago, and we have them in the cooler for sale right now. We've got a walk-in cooler full of cranberries right now.
And we just saw this. There's a lot of cranberries in that closet. Second one isn't bad.
I like the crunchiness. There are recipes. There are recipes for like a fresh salsa made with the
Oh,
cranberries.
really? And the third one, it just kind of keeps getting better. Let's try number 4. Yeah. I could see you having a bowl of those and eating them while you're going down the road. It'd be pretty good.
A lot of people like tart foods.
And I'm sure that in the raw form you get more than what you would in a juiced form
Absolutely.
as far as the health benefits.
Yes, fiber, no sugar. Definitely.
And you said in the juices they take the seeds out and they get the vitamin C out of the seeds. Do they process with the skins also?
Yes, and the skins are what adds the tart flavor to our cranberry ice cream that we make homemade.
Okay, and I just got through eating some of this cranberry ice cream. I thought, cranberry ice cream, really?
What did you think?
I loved it. It was very, very good. And Paula makes this herself.
Yes,
in small batches.
And another gal, we make it once a week, or in the summer we have to make it more than once a week because it's so popular and has such a following that we run out in a week's time. So
Okay.
we make it once a week, and it's quite popular. People rave about it. It's not for everyone because those little seeds are in the ice cream and some skins too. So some people don't like that, but most people do.
Well, I thought it was great. I ate mine and was really happy.
I think the secret is the fresh lemon juice.
Oh, you put lemon juice in there too.
Fresh squeezed, and that makes all the difference.
Okay, and you had a lot of sugar? I mean, it wasn't super sweet, but it didn't have quite the same tart or whatever that the raw berries had.
Yes, there is sugar added, but I have cut back on the sugar and added more cranberry puree because we just thought it needed a little more tartness, and that's what the cranberry is all about, is that good tart flavor that's like nothing else.
Right. That is so cool. I had no idea I liked cranberries so much. Okay, well, let's take a step on out into the museum, and your museum kind of covers, your museum covers from beginning of planting all the way on through harvest, but you've also got another section here that is a research facility. And tell us a little bit about the research facility. Ardell was kind of mentioning that it started in, I think, 1910. Maybe her farm started in 1910.
Yes, it was in the 20s, 1922. Actually, next year will be 100 years since our first researcher came from Washington State University.
Okay.
And that was DJ Crowley, and he was here for many years and was the one that came up with the theory of the water to protect them from freezing. So he
Okay.
was a really just such a valuable source here with not only cranberry farmers, but just agriculture in general here on the peninsula.
Okay, and do you still have a researcher here?
Well, we have the research station is right in front of the museum.
Okay.
It was built in 1949, and it right now is being refurbished a little bit because the last scientist here retired, and the position has not been filled yet by Washington State University.
Okay.
So we're waiting on a new person to come in.
And I noticed that you have cranberry fields out there. You have like 6 or 8 different, what do you call them, pods or little
bogs.
fields? They're bogs.
Yep.
Okay, bogs that are dry because you haven't bogged them yet. Am I wrong?
I've never heard that
I'm sorry. I just come up with whatever I come up with. But you had several different bogs out
Yes,
there
we have 8
that are
bogs.
dry.
Well, they're always dry, remember? Cranberries
Except
don't grow in
for-
water.
right.
So we have 8 bogs. The research station does testing out there on the bogs.
Okay.
So there, you may have seen some little flags out there where they're doing some testing for the tipworm and how to eradicate that.
Okay.
We have a lot of pests here and a lot of weeds, so it's a real challenge to grow the cranberries against those odds there. Right now, since we don't have a researcher, Ocean Spray is doing some research here on the bog.
Okay.
But you'll see in the first bog over here, there is kind of a patchwork quilt, and it's
Right.
different varieties of cranberries that they have done trials on to see, how they grow and how they, how early they produce. Do they produce a lot of fruit or not? So that's
And there's a
kind
lot of
neat.
fruit on those. It's kind of interesting because when you walk out to look at it, I thought that it had already been harvested and that the plants were all kind of beat down and were ready for bedding for winter or whatever. But actually, they're there. They don't grow much more than about 4 or 5 inches off the ground, and the berries are just full. It's amazing how many berries are on each bush, but you don't see that. It looks almost kind of like a dead patch out there, to be honest with you. And then it looked like you had different signs for the berries being planted at different times. I saw one for 2007, one for 2014, I think.
Yes.
And so you've got different varieties.
Exactly.
And they
that's
were
right.
planted at different times?
Right,
Okay.
to see what produces best. And, some are early harvesting, some are later harvesting, some are darker in color, some are larger. So there is a lot of variety to them.
Do they crossbreed?
Yes, they do. That's the patchwork quilt I talked about.
Okay.
They come up with different varieties by doing that.
So they'll hybrid themselves. Like if, I know like corn, if you plant the same kind of corn, they'll end up crossbreeding. But if you plant one that harvests earlier and one that harvests later, then you'll end up with that same variety of corn. I just didn't know if cranberries did the same kind of thing or not.
You're getting out of my territory now, so we'll wait for the scientists to come.
It's probably out of my territory too with the corn. I probably just flubbed up, but anyway, okay.
I wanted to mention that the cranberry is an upright evergreen vine. So it's evergreen, so you don't have to plant that crop but once. It will
Okay.
probably produce for a couple decades before maybe you need to make a new bog. And when you want to make a new bog, you just take clippings from the plants and they root so easily because
Really?
they are, it's very short, like you said, about 4 inches. And then they will root, they disc them into the sandy soil and they will root easily, and then you'll have a new crop. It takes 3 to 5 years to get fruit off that crop, but they can, take it from another bog, so it's all right there on the farm.
Wow, that's really cool.
And something interesting and kind of a fun fact about cranberries is once things have been harvested, and harvest is about mid-September to the end of October, come December, you could be driving by a cranberry bog and it looks all red.
Okay.
What that is the leaves have turned color like a lot of leaves do in the fall. And that's when they start to go dormant. So they'll stay dormant for the winter time.
Okay, but the leaves, okay, you said they change color, but yet you said it was an evergreen.
Yes, it is, meaning it doesn't need to be replanted year after year.
Okay.
It comes back in the spring.
Okay, so it's not like an evergreen tree that stays green.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
That's where I was getting a little bit confused. Not that it's
Got it.
tough to do. Confusing me's pretty easy. Okay, well, let's take a step out here into the museum. When we first come out here, we're in the research part of the museum, and you've got lots of pictures, lots of the old harvest type equipment. This is interesting. You've got a box with a bunch of rods that come out and they're pointed and it's got a handle on top.
Yes.
Is that the way that they used to harvest?
That's exactly right. This is a picker. And it has sharp pointy edges, and they would just kind of rake it through the berry vines, and they would get caught up in these metal tines and go into this box, and then they would empty them into a wooden box.
Okay, so that was for dry harvesting.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So these are very old and very heavy. They must have been very strong people doing this kind of work.
I think in the old days they were very strong people to
Yes.
do anything that they did. Everything looked tough.
That's right. Now, the center of this room, you'll see we have a Cranberry Sorter from 1923. And this was made in Massachusetts. And you can basically imagine that the cranberries are going to be coming out onto these two like conveyor belts, and there's place for the waste in the middle. The ladies, usually ladies, would be cleaning the berries and putting the debris in the center there, and then they drop off the end into wooden boxes, and then someone would come along and haul the box off and put a new one there. So pretty
And
simple.
they fed them through the top?
Yes, and then they would tumble here and come
Okay.
down and out.
Okay. And we're looking at a box that on the upright end is probably 7 foot tall, 2 foot by 3 foot, with a bunch of different pulleys and stuff in order to bring those cranberries down, and then separation plate that comes down onto the conveyor belts, like what she was saying. It's a pretty neat looking centerpiece.
Yes, it is. Let's
Okay.
show them the other room.
Okay.
This is an interesting contraption. This is called a suction picker, and this is a huge metal contraption. Like I said, it's a lot like a vacuum cleaner. And these came about in the 1940s, early 40s, when the manpower was very low due to World War II.
Okay.
So they needed help on the farm, and we're a very remote little peninsula here on the Pacific Ocean, and it was hard to find workers. So this was something that they thought would help make their work a little easier. They were powered by gas engines and kind of sucked the berries off the vines and up through a hose and out into bags or boxes. But they did find that they were bruising the fruit somewhat.
Okay.
So they weren't, you really don't want bruised fruit. So they weren't used a lot. They were replaced by the dry pickers. Mr. Furford from Grayland came up with the Furford picker pruner. And then in the 40s also they came up with the water beater, which is what we use today, something similar when we flood the bogs.
Okay.
The Furford pickers are for dry picking, so they are kind of like a large lawnmower with pruning shears at the bottom that pick the berries. They come up through the machine and they drop into a gunny sack on the back, and then they just toss the sacks aside, and then a little rail cart will come and pick them up. And those are the fruits that will be sold in the grocery stores, in the produce department, because
Okay.
dry picked fruit is going to last longer. They're more conducive to fresh sales. And the wet harvested berries are going to be made into juice or sauce, and or craisins perhaps.
Oh, okay. And do they make the craisins here, or do they send those off? I mean, the climate here is so wet. How would you dry anything?
You know, there is a craisin plant in Markham, which is very near Aberdeen, Washington.
Okay.
And that plant has been there for quite some time. And I'm not sure exactly when they started making craisins, but that is where the Grayland berries are received by Ocean Spray. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if they do tours. I don't think they do, but it would be interesting to find out how they make those craisins. But right now, we'll just keep it a secret.
Okay. Yeah, craisins are one of my favorite things. I love them in my oatmeal.
Yes, they're delicious in salads, anything really.
Now, is this one of the beaters that you were
Yes.
talking about? Okay, and this looks like basically, how would I describe it? It looks kind of like a rototiller with two back wheels, the engine in the middle, and then instead of having the rototiller blades, it's just got two discs that are probably 18 inches round with a little bar coming across, no teeth or anything else.
No.
It just kind of beats the berries off of the plants, it
That's
looks
right,
like.
because berries naturally float. They have 4 seed chambers inside, so they are hollow in the middle. They naturally float. So
Okay.
once they add that water and they drive this through there, the reel in front turns about 100 RPM. So it's repeatedly striking the vines underneath and dislodging the berries. And then they just pop up to the surface, and then people will get in the bog with their waders. I think people have seen a lot of that, maybe on TV, when people are in the bogs with rakes and paddles and booms, and they corral those berries, and they send them up a little elevator, like a conveyor, and they drop into the trucks that are waiting. And then the
Okay.
trucks will drive them up to the Ocean Spray receiving station, which is only about a mile up the road.
Okay. Yeah, this is all really, really interesting. Now, this one here, it looks like a beater with a conveyor belt on it.
This one is the Furford picker pruner I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
There's a picture of Mr. Furford. 1956
Okay.
is when he developed that. It was, let's see, The thing that's interesting about this machine is it not only picks the fruit, but at the same time it's pruning the plants, which have runners. So you don't want the runners to mat down the area and make it hard, for the berries to grow up out of there. So
you got to cut the runners off all the time.
So he developed a way to pick and prune at the same time, and they still use these today. And there is a place in Grayland that has a Cranberry Museum, and it was the site of his manufacturing plant.
Okay.
There's a picture there.
Yep. I find it interesting that they pick them both dry and wet, that it's not kind of a uniform system of how to do it.
Well, in Grayland, they have done the dry pick for so long, and they have bogs that are so long and narrow that they didn't have the room to put in irrigation ditches like we have here. So they are known for their dry picking. However, I do believe someone is putting in a wet harvest for one of their bogs up there, but basically they do the dry picking and we do the wet harvest down here.
Okay.
And wet harvest came out in, I believe, the 40s. So it was a new option.
Okay.
But so dry pick is the earliest method.
Okay. And then we move over here and we've got several different kinds of sprinklers and sprayers. You've got a wood irrigation pipe that's pretty interesting, that's wrapped with wire.
Cedar,
And,
made out of cedar.
Made out of cedar.
Still viable. You could they find them when they're digging new bogs.
Oh, do they?
Yes, they'll find pieces of them, so we're fortunate to have an example of what they use.
Yeah, you don't see the pipe like this very often.
no.
I've seen a piece here and a piece there, but it's a wooden pipe. They used to use those for fire suppression and water lines and all that.
Right, now they use PVC.
Well, exactly. And then you've got boots.
Yes.
These bog boots are extremely interesting.
Yes, most people like these bog boots right here. They are unusual, and it just really shows the ingenuity of the cranberry farmers. They had to design things to work for themselves. They're very remote here on the peninsula, and they didn't have access to much hardware, so they made their own.
And
So
these things are just wooden platforms. Some of them strap on your shoes. That one pair that she was talking about that everybody likes looks like somebody just put a wooden sole on the bottom of their shoe and then put these. They're not like golf cleats or anything. They're big. They're 1.5 inch round and about 2 inches long. Kind of have a point to them so that you don't crush the berries while you're walking over the plants.
that's right.
And there's several different styles here, and they're really an interesting looking boot that if you ever found a pair in an antique store, you'd wonder what in the world they used them for.
Absolutely. They're very strange looking, but they served the purpose of not crushing the berries as they walk through the field. Now, these are from the 1940s. But this one is made just with a pair of rubber boots they cut off, and then they put straps onto a wooden platform, and then they've got 4 wooden peg-like things on the bottom to keep them up and out of the bog, basically.
Now, are they still using stuff like this, or?
They talk about the running shoes became really lightweight, so it wasn't like a heavy boot going through there, but I think that some people might have similar shoes to this that they may still use.
Okay. And then you've got a 1940s weed whacker. That is, it's like a 2x2 or maybe 2 by 2.5, and it's a piece of wood. It's about 7 foot long. I'm not really sure how that worked, but it's got straps and all kinds of little things to it.
Yes, they would have had a long cord from a power source.
Which they say is an electric drill that turned the cable.
Turned the cable, yes, causing the blade to spin at high speed and cut anything in its path. Watch out.
It's pretty interesting looking. It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, it's even got a little toggle switch up here at the end to turn on your electric drill. Yeah, that's just a really interesting looking weed whacker.
Yes, yes, early weed whacker.
I'm impressed. Sometimes you wonder about the evolution of some of this stuff, how we came up with the thing that we walk around and cut our yard with, and here you see the beginnings.
Right, very ingenious. Let's see, this one is something interesting. It doesn't look interesting. All it is a round metal container.
Right.
But these are picker boxes. When people were out on their hands and knees and picking these berries, this was the measure that they used. So they were paid by how many of these containers that they filled. But in the 30s, there was the Depression.
Right.
Nobody had any money.
Right.
So what they did, once they picked a measure, for every measure they got a token. And local merchants would redeem the tokens for food or products in their stores. And then later, when the cranberry farmers made their money off of the crop, they would pay the stores back. How that
Okay.
worked.
That's interesting. And that holds what? Probably a gallon and a half, I would think. Something like that. And that's pretty cool that the merchants and the farmers were all able to work together and make that happen.
Yes, let's see, I think it says their token was about 30 cents,
And their
which you
token-
could probably buy a lot with 30 cents in the 1930s.
And that was for each one of those that were filled? Okay. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, these are also, we have a couple more cranberry sorters here in the museum. They're smaller versions, and they are put through the top, and there's a drum that they go through, would spin, and then they had different size openings so that the berries would fit through, and basically they're grading the size of the berry by the size of the opening.
Okay.
And then-
So the berries have different grades depending on how big they are.
And then the ones that are too soft would stay in there and go into the box. So a good cranberry bounces.
Okay.
In fact, I've had people here from Massachusetts visiting, and they said, "Oh, you've got bounce berries." That's how they know them. It all started in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yes. So I think our first cranberry bog started in 1885.
Oh, wow.
And that's Cranberry Road is the site of that. It's no longer there, but it was a farmer out here, had a visitor come from Massachusetts. And he said, well, you already have the native berries growing here in this sandy soil, so this would be ideal for growing cranberries. So he sent vines to him to get started.
Okay.
And that was up on Cranberry Road. 1885 was the first crop here on the peninsula that had been cultivated.
Wow.
But they were here prior to that, just growing, they're native to North America, so they just grow in the sandy soils of the country, which is all across the country. On the northern latitudes, if you looked at a map, we're all kind of on the same line across the country.
Okay.
Wisconsin.
Right.
Massachusetts, New Jersey, Michigan, and our West Coast growing region is from British Columbia all the way down to Southern Oregon and Bandon, who produces a lot of cranberries in Bandon. Oregon probably produces twice as many as Washington.
Okay. Wow, this has just been really interesting. I didn't know what I was going to get when I came to a cranberry museum.
Well, you've got educated.
I've got educated.
That is our mission, is to educate people on the cranberry, and that's the reason that we're really here. You know, the gift shop is fun, and we have all things cranberry, but really the main thing is the museum.
Yeah. And this is really interesting, and I so appreciate you taking your time today, Paula. The whole cranberry thing, from the farm to the museum to the gift shop. The gift shop is just amazing. All things cranberry.
Absolutely.
So I like to finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. People need to get out and explore. You can stop in at a little tiny cranberry museum and learn more than what you ever thought could be involved in this thing. Paula just realized that she did not give us how the cranberry got its name, and so she is now going to tell that story. So here we go.
Okay. When the Pilgrims first settled in America, it was the Indians who introduced them to cranberries. The Pilgrims thought that the drooping pink blossom of the berry looked like the downturned head of a crane.
Okay.
So they called it craneberry, naturally.
Right.
And over time, craneberry was shortened to cranberry.
Okay. So that's the reason that we have them at Thanksgiving.
That's right.
And of course, the Pilgrims landed on the East Coast, which is where you said that they came from to begin with. So the story just makes total sense.
Yes, I believe in Plymouth, in the Plymouth area, they had a lot of cranes.
Okay.
So it made sense to them. The flower is an interesting looking flower. It is like nothing I've ever seen. It has pale pink flowers that curl up, so those look like the feathers.
Okay.
And then the inside, the stamen of the plant is a long piece, and it looks like the beak. But the flower itself is just a tiny, tiny little thing, maybe not even half an inch. And they're very delicate, but that is how the cranberry got its name, is all about the flower.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. Thank you. You know, as I always finish these things out, the world is full of wonder. And sometimes it's fun to see it from somebody else's perspective. Everybody needs to get out, see things, enjoy it, and have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
Haul the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?